Welcome to Mike's Retro Curiosities, where we explore the wonderful world of retro games. Today we're taking a look at Panzer Dragoon. Panzer Dragoon was released in 1995 for the Sega Saturn and was actually a launch title for the system over here in the US. The game was developed by Team Andromeda and published by Sega. It served as something of a technical showpiece for the Sega Saturn, with some very impressive 3D visuals for the time. It also showed off the system's audio capabilities, with the first stage theme being fully orchestrated. As far as gameplay is concerned, Panzer Dragoon was a natural evolution of Sega's arcade rail shooters. This was a gaming lineage that began with Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom, then later games such as Space Harrier, Afterburner, and Galaxy Force. This is a fairly basic action game, but with some unique wrinkles. Tapping the fire button would allow you to unleash a steady stream of laser fire, but if you held down the button, then instead you could lock on to various targets. You could lock on to many targets at once, and doing so would unleash a stream of powerful homing projectiles. The lock-on attack was generally your best offensive option, but the laser attack was still useful as well, as you could use it to shoot down enemy projectiles, and it was more powerful against certain targets. As a result, you often had to switch back and forth between these two attack options very rapidly during gameplay if you wanted any hope of survival. Also, on top of attacking from the front, enemies could often attack from all sides, and the player could rotate their character using the L and R button to fire in all directions. It was often necessary to keep track of where you are firing, where enemies are coming from, and where they move relative to your character's position in view. Luckily, the game provides players with a radar that helps you keep track of all of this. Overall, the game provides a very solid core gameplay loop in spite of its simplicity. There's definitely plenty of intense action to be had here. The game is fairly short, featuring only about 6 levels. The game does ramp up in difficulty in later levels, but it's never too hard, although the second to last level will definitely give your thumbs a good workout. All in all, it'll probably only take you a couple of hours to beat this thing. Panzer Dragoon really feels like it was built with an arcade mentality of short, intense play sessions in mind. So while it might not be long, it will definitely keep you at the edge of your seat throughout the duration. The story in this game is fairly basic, although it does sort of allude to being part of a much larger world. It has a post-apocalyptic setting, likely heavily inspired by Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. And much like Nausicaa, this game touches on themes of anti-imperialism and trying not to repeat the mistakes of the past. There is an evil empire attempting to control a tower from an earlier technologically advanced civilization in an attempt to conquer the world. They are opposed by the Blue Dragon, whose original rider is mortally wounded at the start of the game. Players control a new rider, who wages a one-man war against the Empire. As I said, there isn't a whole lot here, but later entries in the series would greatly expand on this game's story and world building. But in my opinion, where this game really excels is in its art style and atmosphere. Panzer Dragoon's art style is heavily inspired by the works of the French comic artist Moebius. Despite the rather crude early 3D visuals, I think that they do an excellent job bringing this style to life. In fact, even though this game was later remade in HD, I kind of feel like something was lost in the translation, and I ultimately prefer the look of this original version. This game also has an incredible atmosphere that's really unlike anything else I've seen outside of the series. Whether you're surveying vast alien landscapes or flying through the cramped interiors of various caverns or ruins, the game produces an unmistakable sense of majesty and awe. Overall, I really enjoy Panzer Dragoon. As stated before, it is somewhat overly simplistic and short. Later entries in the series would greatly build on and expand on this game's formula. But you know what? I would rather be having a great time for only about an hour or two than be bored out of my mind for tens of hours. And this game is a great time. Plus, again, this game's atmosphere is absolutely incredible. There have been several different versions of Panzer Dragoon released over the years. As you can see, I've got the one released in Japan on the Sega Saturn. I got this one simply because, as is the case with the vast majority of games released for the system, the Japanese version is significantly cheaper than its North American counterpart. The only real difference between the two is that the North American version has English subtitles during its story sequences, and as stated before, the story in this game isn't really anything too complex, so I'm not really missing out on a whole lot. There was also later a PC port. That version was later included as an unlockable in the original Xbox title Panzer Dragoon Orta, and there was later an HD remake released for the Nintendo Switch and other contemporary systems. That one is probably the most accessible for modern audiences. Panzer Dragoon would end up spawning several sequels, and for a few years was actually one of Sega's flagship franchises. There was Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei for the Saturn, which in spite of its name I believe is actually more of a prequel to the original. There was an entry for the Sega Game Gear which was released only in Japan. 1998 would bring us what is generally considered to be the most critically acclaimed entry in the series, with Azale Panzer Dragoon RPG, or Panzer Dragoon Saga as it was known here in the US. The final entry, not counting the Panzer Dragoon 1 remake, was Panzer Dragoon Orta for the original Xbox. All of these games, with the exception of the Game Gear entry, are very highly acclaimed and beloved, though unfortunately the series has since gone dormant. But that will be it for today. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This video is sponsored by M&M Games, and I will see you guys next time.